All right, hey there. I see folks are starting to come in here. Give us a little bit of time to get settled while everybody's joining up. But welcome to our kind of chat session here today. Informal discussion about some approaches to course creation that maybe a little outside of what most folks are doing, and we want to make sure that Learning Revolution readers, followers, course creators out there kind of know about these other options to help you up your game as we are describing it. So as you are coming in, would love it. I got a couple questions I want to ask, but one just to sort of break the ice. It's always good to know where people are coming from. So if you don't mind just sticking that in there, where you're from. We've got folks all over the world, I know. So where you're joining us from today. I'm Jeff Cobb with Learning Revolution. I know some of you are coming in, definitely. I'm here in Carrboro, North Carolina. We got Derek from Toronto, Chris from Connecticut, Mount Shasta, California from Karen. All right, nice. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Alexis Kelowna, British Columbia, probably butchering that, sorry. Joined here by my business colleague and friend, Robert Lunte, who's coming in from Sun Valley, Idaho. Hey there, Robert.
Hey, it's great to be here this morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, good to have you. Afternoon, my time. We've got that whole time zone thing. Got some people, I'm sure, in the evening. Alexis said, maybe I was pronouncing it right, but it's also called wine country, where she is in British Columbia. Nice. Matt is in Troutman, North Carolina. I don't think I knew you were in Troutman, Matt. So we got Matt Tang with us here, also from CourseCREEK, who's going to be giving us some good insight into using tools like Articulate, Storyline, and Powtoon for animations. So some of the less common, at least in sort of the world that I think most Learning Revolution readers are in, a little bit less common than, say, authoring in your course platform, that sort of thing. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, why that might not be the best way to go, or at least there are other ways to go than just authoring courses in your course platform. One other question I'll ask as folks are coming in, and we're about to tee up and have a little conversation here. Thanks for saying where you're coming from. Jorge, I didn't see you in New York City. Good we have some New York City representation here, the big city. I'm definitely very much in the small city here in Carrboro, North Carolina, that we like to call ourselves the Paris of the Piedmont. We have no ego problems whatsoever here. But I'm going to ask, have you actually created a course yet? So if you have created a course, say yes. If you haven't, say no in the chat there. It'd be good to know that as well. Jorge, no. So thinking about it. Alexis, yes, lots. All right, Carrie, yes. Chris, oh gosh, yes. Many, Karen, yes. Okay, so we got a lot of people who have created courses already. So that's great. Either way, you're going to benefit from this. We'll talk about some things that are pretty fundamental, pretty foundational, but never hurts to revisit them. But then, if you haven't been using a tool like Articulate, Storyline, or another course authoring package, we'll be looking at, how that can play into what you're doing, whether you're just starting or whether you've been doing this for a long time. And we'll look at some tools like we said, Powtoon animations, which, if you're already a seasoned course creator, can be a great thing for kind of taking you to a different level. All of this is going to help stand you out more in what is really just an increasingly, crowded marketplace. The PETA people probably get after me for using the expression, but you can swing a cat these days and hit an online course. Basically, everybody's putting them out there, so you got to stand out with quality content. So with that, well, let's kick into this session. This is informal. You can ask questions all along the way. Robert's going to be presenting some stuff. Matt's going to be presenting stuff. But as things come up, get it into the chat. Or if you want to be absolutely certain we see it, put it into the Q&A because it can just be a little easier to know that there's a question there. Sometimes the chat can get a little overwhelming. But Robert, I'm going to ask you to talk first. Tell us, for folks who don't know, I think a lot of people know that CourseCREEK, you are our course development partner, our preferred course development partner. To be clear, the stuff we're talking about today is stuff you do, and you can do for people. These are also things you can do on your own. So, yes, there is some selling in the background here. CourseCREEK would love for you to work with them if that's a fit, but you'll be able to use what we're talking about regardless. So, tell us a little bit about CourseCREEK for those who don't know about it, Robert.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. CourseCREEK is a firm of specialists that essentially are helping educators, coaches, anybody with a great idea, companies, plan, create, go through the creation process, which we're going to talk about today, and implement, do the heavy lifting for online courses and e-learning solutions. It's just that simple. It's a do-it-all service. Yep.
And Matt, what do you do at CourseCREEK?
I'm an instructional designer and implementation manager. So I help make sure the content, is going to reach the audience that it's designed to, that it's instructionally sound, help people make sure they look good on video, and then ultimately take that content and make it come alive on the web. And also build animations and excuse me, interactions to make it really pop and be interesting, which is what we'll be talking about today.
Cool. It's great to have an actual instructional designer here, because I think most of us could use a little more instructional design input than we may naturally have or know about. I will mention too, Robert and I met many years ago because you were an early Learning Revolution reader. We connected by email, and that's when you were in the midst of, getting your own courses out there, building your presence on Udemy, and having a lot of success yourself with online courses. So you're not just out there making them for other people. You were making them for yourself first, and you decided people need help with this.
Yeah, I've been either myself or in partnerships about 21 courses at the moment. My own course production, we're up to about 5 courses, and I'm working on a new one right now. In fact, the new course that I'll be producing is, in fact, some of the content that I'll be covering today. We'll be putting it into a nice course. So, been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. And we've talked before about some of your techniques. We're not going to get into them today, but the whole idea of using Udemy as sort of a platform to drive people to other platforms is something you really schooled me in. Let's go ahead and start jumping into things here. And the kind of rough agenda is, I think we're going to talk a little bit about video first, because everybody really needs to be doing video, regardless of how you're creating courses. If you're doing it natively in a platform, if you're just doing videos and putting them out there, even if you're using Articulate or something like that, you're still going to need video in there. And then, of course, Powtoon, which we'll get to, it is a video tool. It's just sort of a different approach to video. So we're going to start by talking about video some, how to maybe get a little better, stand out a little bit with your video, since that is so important. Then we'll move into talking about Articulate, Storyline, course authoring package, and then a little bit about animations and Powtoon and how you might use that. So Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, and I think I'm actually going to jump off of video myself for the moment, but I'll be here in the chat.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. All right. So in the process of making online courses, as Jeff was pointing out, there are all kinds of ways to engage the student, different engagement elements. And in fact, Matt will be talking about Articulate and Storyline, which is a really cool software. It's a neat way to engage students. But regardless of what the media is and what the client will be engaging in, all course creators, not only for the course, but even for social media, for promoting your course, have to be able to communicate and speak and teach to the camera. It's sort of core to really get this done. A decision to make a course or a decision to offer a course and have a big success is, in a sense, also a decision to learn how to get on camera and do it properly. So what I want to share with you today is a quick, simple little presentation. These are tips, things that you should do, that you should know, that are going to help you with your on-camera presentation, and so when you're up and running. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up my presentation for you guys. Please do ask questions if you have any. Right, on-camera tips, teaching to the camera, presenting to the camera, and advice that will save you some time. Just real quick about myself, I'm the CEO and founder of CourseCREEK, and we already talked a little bit about what we do, so let's just jump right into this. Talking head content is what we call it. So what I'm doing right now is I'm a talking head, right? I'm speaking to the camera. It's live on Streamcast, but it very well could be filming a video for a course. So first of all, if anybody talks about talking head or you're sort of wondering what we call this, that's what we call it. So with talking head content, which is going to be a big part of my presentation today, you want to make sure that you have the right video gear, all right? So I'm going to touch briefly on do-it-yourself video gear. Oftentimes when it comes to video gear, people seem to think that they need to maybe make huge investments on big, fancy professional gear, sort of cameras that sit on your shoulder and that sort of thing. No, you don't need to do that. And I don't want to see you guys make that mistake. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the storyboard, which is sort of the logical sequence of the lessons and the modules of the course. It has to be sorted out and organized properly. We're going to talk about a talk point script. And then I'm going to give you some formulas for how to present your lesson in a way that is effective, engaging, and keeps people interested in your course, as opposed to talking to the camera and doing a lot of ums and ahs and retakes and getting frustrated. If you follow these formulas, you'll be able to knock them out a lot quicker. So here we go. Do-it-yourself video gear. The do-it-yourself video gear is, and I'm actually using some of my gear right now, offers you a couple different benefits. One, it's inexpensive comparatively. Two, if you learn how to set it up properly, you can do it yourself, versus the alternative would be to hire a professional videography team. And I've done that myself, and we have a service like that in CourseCREEK, but it's not cheap. You're $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 to bring in a real crew. And I'll just be completely honest with you, it's not all that necessary to make an online course, because online course talking head content, there's some exceptions, but for the most part, it's just simply talking straight to a webcam. All right, so let's take a look at some of this gear that you would need. And if anybody wants a link to this Amazon store that I've created that has the recommended gear for do-it-yourself, I'll give it to you. In fact, I'll just give it to you right now. Let me grab that. I'll grab that later when I get into talking. So one reason why we do this do-it-yourself gear, other than the obvious, is it creates a workflow in your production that is that saves time and efficient. That is to say that if you set up the gear properly, then once you have it all plugged in and ready to go, you can literally pound out video compositions quickly by the minute. So in the past, when I did online courses, I would bring in a videographer guy, and in addition to it being expensive, you would also have to fight with batteries and lighting and sound, and it was a big sort of moving gear production. And just like an actor on a movie set, it would sort of sit around and wait around, and wasting time. And reflecting back on that, it was expensive and not efficient. Then I found out a way to get just this gear that you're looking at right here, some adapters, a lavalier, a camera, a webcam, and hook it up in a proper way that allows me to basically set it up, push a red button, step back, give my presentation, hit pause, save the file to an external hard drive right here, step back, set up the camera on the software, hit record, do it again. So do-it-yourself gear, if you have the right gear, enables you to vastly increase your workflow and your efficiency, and far, far less headaches when you're making your talking head content. So that's something that you definitely want to make sure that you have the right gear and a workflow that's efficient. Next is on-camera framing. When we talk about framing, it's a common mistake that when we work with clients that are learning the on-camera, they're going through the on-camera coaching sessions with us, oftentimes the framing gets messed up, all right? And the framing just means how you sit inside the lens. Like right now, the framing is the top, the left and right side borders, and the bottom border. This is the frame. And generally speaking, what you want for good framing is what is, the example in my picture here, or what I'm giving you right now live. You want to have, I'd say, about 4 to 6 inches of headroom right above. You definitely don't want this. Don't do this, okay, where your hair is getting cut off or your head's getting cut off. And that might seem obvious, but you might be surprised at how many people will just say, hey, I just knocked out 25 videos, I'm ready to go. And I go and I look at it, and it's the headless teacher, right? So pay attention to your details. In framing, 4 to 6 inches on the top. And another thing that can happen from time to time is in terms of the bottom frame, oftentimes people will get up so darn close, right, that when they're gesticulating, they're kind of speaking with their hands. You can't see the hands and the gesticulation, and I think that's a problem. Apart from the fact that if you're really super close to someone, even though it's on video, you can kind of get a sense of, you're in my space, even though somebody's on video. So what I've learned is kind of, 4 to 6, I'm going to adjust my camera here, show you guys exactly. If I were going to make a video right now, I would go just about like this, where I have 4 to 6 inches at the top, and then the bottom margin is right above the belt buckle. Right above the belt buckle. Why? Because I want to be able to gesticulate. I want to be able to talk with my hands. And if I'm talking with my hands, I don't want this going on. That's not an acceptable shot. That's very amateurish. You can't put that in a course. You can't ask people to pay for this. Too much headroom, and your hands are getting cut off. All right? So make sure, it's a real simple thing, but it's a simple thing to screw up on. Make sure that you're lined up very nicely inside the frame. Next, the storyboard. The storyboard is, in some sense, kind of the crystal ball of your entire course project. It's not necessarily about on camera, but if the storyboard is organized and done properly, it will have notes about on camera, and it will keep your course organized. And it's so important, I did want to just touch on it. What you're looking at is a spreadsheet that essentially gives us the title of our course, the title of our modules, okay? And when we say modules, it's sort of like chapters of a book. The module might be the course might be how to make chocolate chip cookies, all right? And the first module might be get the ingredients. It's just a name of the section. And then inside the module will be individual lessons which typically have talking head video content in them, okay? So that's what you're looking at here, is a spreadsheet, which is a storyboard, and we work on these with our clients at CourseCREEK, and it's absolutely critical that in the storyboard that you stay very organized. Modules, lessons, each lesson is numbered, and when you make the on-camera content that I was just referring to, that when you're working on that content, you're in production, you're doing your shoot, you're working from this storyboard. So this is where the tie-in to the on-camera work is relevant. A good storyboard means that workflow and that shoot remains very organized, and the files that you're producing are matching these individual lessons on the storyboard. There's some additional data here. In this particular storyboard, our client needed to indicate who would be the actor. All right, if you're just by yourself, that would be by yourself. And over here on the right side is referring to engagement elements for each lesson. You notice that for these lessons that we're going to need an on-camera talking head video. So lesson number 1.2, overview and introduction, define that lesson, will be a video, an on-camera video with graphics. When we say graphics, we're referring to motion graphic editing. Okay? So in review on this slide, no on-camera presentation or production will go well unless you're well organized, and that starts with the storyboard. So I want to encourage you all to make a storyboard, and I will give you a link to our storyboard template after my presentation as well that you can use. Moving forward, we have scripting, getting back in front of the camera And I'm just going to take a look at the chat here, make sure we have any, see if we have any questions.
Robert, Jorge did ask, he says he speaks a lot with his hands.
Yeah.
So you need to get further back from the camera.
What, to engage the gesticulation?
Yeah, I think just so his hands aren't necessarily going off the screen. He was seeing at points that your hands were getting cut off as you were like coming up close to the camera, real close to the camera. So
yeah,
you want to make sure that your hands are staying within the screen. And
sure. Follow my take my own advice, right? So thank you, Jorge. And do we have any other questions here? Robert probably has recording through. I think he's not all that fond of prompters.
We had a question about a teleprompter, and I know you're about to get to that with the talk point script here because you don't really like reading from a prompter. I'm a little more in favor of it myself. I've found it useful, and there's a prompter I use that I'm fond of. But yeah, you might want to address that a little bit in a second.
We're going to talk about that now. Okay. So I've worked with teleprompters. I use teleprompters for content that is complex, that whereby the script really goes on and on. I've had certain productions where we had to do that. In a sense, there would be no way that I could have any sort of, that I could riff and improv on it. And I've also just full out riffed and improv on content as well. So if you can imagine, we have a spectrum when it comes to scripting. And the spectrum is full out improv riffing, sort of making up as you go, and being tied to a prompter. Strengths and weaknesses either way. The prompter, well, everything you say after a couple takes, the strength would be you do get all the content out. The weakness of a prompter is, one, it's a lot of work and it really slows your workflow down. Okay, in a big way, it can bog down your production. And a teleprompter can make you look a little stiff. You can tell when somebody's reading, and people have different levels of skill at that. But if you haven't been working with a teleprompter very often, then there's a good chance that you'll look sort of stiff and it'll be obvious that you're reading. I want to stay away from that. On the other extreme of just riffing, well, the risk there is if you don't know your content super intimately, and if you're not practiced on your content, on your lesson, then what happens with riffing and improving is too many takes, you don't get it right, you get frustrated. So what do? There's an interim solution here, and it's called talk point scripting. And this is what I do for most of my lesson presentations. So you see in a talking head, in red is the talk point. So the first talk point is get focus, tell a story, use humor, make a demonstration. That's a note to myself. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell a story to grab the student's attention, or maybe make a joke or make a demonstration. It's a way of capturing focus, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. As you notice, the next talking point, explain the difference between third-party course marketplaces and creator-owned learning management systems. Just sort of imagining that I'm doing an online course lesson, all right? But you get the point. The talk points make sure that I hit every point and element and argument that I want to make in my presentation. It ensures that it will all be there, but it allows me to still riff on the point. So the simple description is that a talk point script is where you're going to riff on the talking points, you're going to improv on the talking points, but not completely be by yourself or completely tied to the prompter. And this seems to be the nice balance between the two. And yeah, Jeff has found a cool teleprompter that works with his phone, from what I understand, and go check it out. But this is a way of saving you time if you know your content well. Okay, so let's move on. The perfect promo formula. So there is a perfect formula for doing a promo video. Oftentimes clients will struggle with their promo video. It gets windy, it gets boring, it's not hitting the point. There's a scientific formula for the promo video. And when I say promo video, I'm referring to a sort of the sales video that sits on your sales page. It's arguably the most important video in your entire course, is the one that captures people's imagination and has that persuasive element to it. So here are the bullets that make up a great promo video formula. Again, I have a handout I'll give to you guys at the end of my presentation. You want to start with a slide that shows your course image. So it's just a bump. Video starts and your logo slides in. Yeah, I don't always do that, but it's not a bad idea. Number two, I always do in my promos is you want to lead with your credibility. Introduce yourself and lay out quickly, briefly, your short bio, your short credibility piece. Then you want to describe the benefits of the course and what your students will get after completing the course. At the end of this course, you're going to be able to not burn your cookies, not make soggy cookies, but have the best cookies in the world. And in fact, your cookies are going to be so great at the end of this course that you may even want to start your own cookie business. Okay, I'm just playing around, but that's an example of the benefits that you would get if you took my course. Then, in the promo, next, explain how the course is designed and list the major topics you'll cover. In this course, you're going to, boop, annotation comes in, motion graphics. You're going to learn about the ingredients. 2, you're going to learn the different kinds of chocolate that you can use. Boom, you're going to learn about proper temperatures. You're going to learn about different kinds of ingredients. You can see where this is going. So you would want to be able to show them the topics, list the topics that they're going to be covered in the course. Then, in the end, describe the perfect student for the course. This course is really great for anybody who's never made a cookie before. So if you want to make the world's best chocolate chip cookie and you are at least, above the age of 5 years old, you might be a good candidate for this course. All right? And then towards the end, a CTA, a call to action. So that's the course, that's where we're going, that's what's going to happen, that's what you're going to learn. So there's nothing left to do but get started. Click the link below and let's get going. I'll see you on the inside. All right, that's a little CTA at the end. This is the formula for a great promo course. All right, and I'll give you guys the formula to that. It's also give you my deck. When you click on this link to the deck here, it'll take you out to the landing page of one of my courses where I follow this formula. When we work with our clients on camera at CourseCREEK, we train through the promo video. The promo video is the first video that you work on, typically. And last but not least here, in regards to the videos that sit inside the course, other than the promo, not the promo, but the actual lessons. So if we go all the way back here to the storyboard, right? In regards to these lessons on the inside, there's another formula that I use and we train with our clients, which is called Fire Up Your Lesson Plan formula. And essentially, it's a way of preparing for the on-camera presentation with a strategy that will eliminate headaches, eliminate the needs to do it again, and when you're done with it, you feel like you've hit on everything, and that the video is engaging, that you're not boring on camera, that you'll be able to pull your students in. How do we do that? We're using this acronym. So we have F from fire and focus. So the first thing that you can do, it's a great idea at the beginning of your video is capture your students' focus. There's several ways we can do that. You can use humor. You can tell a joke at the very beginning. You can ask your students a question, something like, have you ever, in another life, I'm a voice coach. That's where I made a lot of my courses, so I'll use that as an example. Have you ever sang a high note and discovered that when you sang the high note, that it was very pushy and it hurt your voice? Sure, that's happened to you, and guess what? You're not special. It's happened to me too. It's happened to everybody. See, I asked a question up front to sort of draw them in and capture their attention. Another thing you can do is tell the story early on. Take a minute, perhaps, to tell a quick story that's relevant to the lesson you're going to teach, or you can demonstrate. So as a voice coach, it was kind of content that was easy for demonstrating. Camera starts, I hit record, and the first thing I do is I sing a big note, or I scream a big note, or I sing a line from a popular song or something for 10 seconds, stop, wink at the camera, and then proceed to teach the lesson that's relevant to that demonstration. So in Fire Up Your Lesson Plan, F stands for focus. Try humor, opening up with a question, telling a story, or demonstrating. The I of FIRE is inform the students of the outcome. So early on, you want to speak to your students after completing this lesson, particular lesson that we're on, you will be able to da-da-da-da. Okay, that's important to get that out there. Then R is remind them of the pain and the pleasure of learning the lesson that you're teaching. So at the end of this lesson, you no longer will feel pushy and uncomfortable when you sing high notes. All right, and then last but not least, the educate and entertain is really the main bulk of the lesson, where you follow the principles that I've shared with you this morning, and you give them a nice engaging presentation and wrap it up with a summary. And last but not least, when it comes to being on camera and just videography in general, it's a good idea to get good motion graphics editing when it's all over. So it's not only you on camera, but it's you on camera with motion graphics and B-rolls and that sort of thing. So that is my presentation on camera, and I will share with you links. I'll share with you my deck. I'll give you the storyboard. I'll give you an example of the scripting and the link to the store with the right gear to purchase. And of course, I'm available if you have any questions. That's it. Hopefully that's helpful for you.
Well, thanks so much, Robert. So that's good basics in getting good video out there, that's going to help you stand out. We're going to move now to talking about course authoring package, storyline, and get into animations with Matt here. So we'll bring Matt on for that. I'll just quickly bullet, why you might want to care about this stuff, particularly doing something like developing and articulate storyline, and Matt will probably touch on this as well. But, a big thing with online courses is you build them, and, if you build them in whatever platform you're using, you might end up with something that looks wonderful, but let's say you're using whatever, Teachable right now, and you want to move to Thinkific, it can be very hard to move a course from one platform to another. If you develop in an independent authoring tool, particularly if you're using platforms that follow e-learning standards, primarily SCORM, you're going to be able to take it from one platform and put it into another platform. So it makes the portability of your course much higher than it would otherwise be. If you want to sell your courses to businesses, which is a huge opportunity that most course creators are not really exploring sufficiently, very often you're either going to have to put those courses on their learning management system, which is going to be SCORM compliant in most cases. You're going to need to give them files that can go in their learning management system, or they're going to need to be able to pull them off of someplace where you have them sitting, which again is going to need to be in a compliant format. So if you're really thinking about selling courses to businesses, B2B selling, developing in an authoring package that is standards compliant is I think really just a must do. And the last point I'll make, and I think y'all will talk about this more, is it gives you the ability to get a little more interactivity, a lot more dynamic screens going. You may not have to spend as much time on camera, because a lot of people really, even if they're using Robert's tips and can shoot good video, they're not crazy about being on camera a whole bunch, so you can use some other tools to convey your information. That's all I'm going to say about it. Matt, I'm going to give it to you to take over.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Robert's always hard to follow on camera. He's such a great presenter. I'm the guy behind the computer who's programming all these, interactions and things. So I'll do my best. All right, let me share my screen here. All right, so I want to talk about Articulate first, but I want to talk about it within the context of learning interactivity and the kind of the tools we use, and then why we're doing this from an educational perspective. So when I think about interactivity, I'm thinking about that's the communication between the learning and the learner. So even when we think about interactivity, like in this webinar, for example, this is learning activity that's going on between the speaker. I can ask questions, you can respond in the chat, and that's a form of interactivity. If you think about, when you were in college or in high school or, the typical kind of academic setting, the teacher is sitting in front of the classroom, asks a question, student responds, and through that response, the teacher is able to correct maybe. So, well, that's not quite it. Or, affirm, yes, that's right. What else? And then kind of extend the knowledge, well, what about this? And it's through that interaction that a lot of learning takes place. And the challenge we have for a lot of courses is it's very difficult to achieve that same level of interaction through asynchronous learning experiences. And when I say asynchronous, that just means like self-paced learning. So if you take most courses in Kajabi or whatever platform you're using, you're watching videos, that's primarily asynchronous, right? You're just kind of going at your own pace. The instructor isn't providing feedback in real time. It's just, self-paced. So this is really crucial if you want to achieve that level of interactivity when you're not sitting there in front of the learner. So why are we interested in this? So engagement. So Robert talked a little bit about this at the FIRE acronym, kind of that focus, some kind of hook to really get them interested. And also throughout the course, to keep them focused on the main learning points, but also to measure learning. So interactivity, we can think it could be really complex, but it could also be really simple. So like a very simple multiple choice quiz is a type of interactivity. And most learning platforms at least provide that as an option. So you can add a quiz that allows you to provide feedback. So you can test their knowledge. Okay, do they know this concept that I just spoke about? Give them a multiple choice question, and then you provide feedback. Oh, that's not quite it. You can program those responses, or you can affirm, say, yes, that's correct, and then move on. So you can measure learning with those types of interactives. You can also reinforce and extend learning. So this is really important for concepts that are not easily addressed in a multiple choice quiz. Higher order learning things. So if you're familiar with like Bloom's taxonomy, for example, which is an instructional design model around kind of the levels of learning when it comes to education. So some things that are more complex are more difficult to measure in a multiple choice quiz. For example, understanding if somebody can kind of synthesize new ideas, not just define something or describe something, right? But actually take what you've taught them, integrate it with past learning and experiences, and come up with new ideas. Like that's much more difficult. You can't really measure that in a multiple choice quiz. But what you can do is create learning interactions that allow you to experience kind of those more complex learning objectives through interactivity. So here's an example. So this is a multiple choice quiz, right? We use graphics, we use interesting layout maybe and colors, but it's just a multiple choice quiz, right? So based on their response, they click something, the software, the learning interprets that response and provides feedback, whether incorrect, correct. It can also record a score, right? So it knows, okay, you scored 7 out of 10 correct, and make a decision based on that. And it could provide additional feedback or encourage you to, okay, well, maybe you need to review this module again, because maybe you didn't really quite understand everything because you missed 3. You only got 7 out of 10 correct. So that's a very simple example. This is a more complex example. So this is an example of a learning game. So the purpose of this is to teach how people working in a distribution center how to load a truck. And there's certain principles that are taught to load the truck correctly. You know, at the very basic surface, this is a Tetris game, right? And we borrowed a lot of the game concepts from that. So there's a kind of a time constraint. If you look up here in the upper left, you know, and things get stacked up on the conveyor belt. And if they get stacked all the way up, the game's over, right? Just like in Tetris, you get stacked across the screen, game's over. But we're also applying some learning concepts. This specific level is they are applying and extending concepts they've learned around fragile and light items and how you stack those things together. So you can imagine it's one thing to talk about, okay, light items or fragile items need to be stacked on top. That's a very easy concept to define, right? And I can ask them a multiple choice question. Where are fragile and light items supposed to be stacked? Top, bottom, middle, anywhere, you know, they can answer that, and that's very easy. It's very different to actually have to do that in kind of a simulated game environment, right? Because now you have the time constraint, and now you have other items, and it just creates a more kind of immersive experience, more engaging experience, and it's a better learning experience as well. It more closely simulates kind of the actual work environment. In this specific game, this is the easiest level. So on future levels, you introduce more items, more types of items, more rules. So again, you're having to combine all those rules in real time to make decisions and hopefully, you know, win the game. So those are kind of the examples of, you know, what I'm talking about when I say interactivity, kind of the things you can do and then why you would do it. So, and these are two of the tools. So at CourseCREEK, we like Articulate. That's our primary tool, and it's a really good tool. If you don't have either of these two tools, I'd recommend you start with Articulate. Both of them, both Articulate and Captivate, provide free trials if you just wanted to start. But I found Articulate is, it's the better product, in my opinion. Articulate has two options. So when you, Articulate 360 is a subscription program. So you sign up for, I think it's like an annual license, and you get access to two main programs. It's a bundled thing. There's a few more, but the two main development applications are Storyline and Rise. So Storyline is more of a traditional, what I would say, kind of e-learning development program. It'll let you pretty much do anything you want. You know, you can create quizzes, you can create content, you can integrate video. And it's, when we talk about kind of standard compliance, it does all that. Rise is easier than Storyline to get started. Like if you've never used Storyline, never used Rise or Captivate, never used any e-learning tool ever, Rise is probably a good place to start. Its capabilities are a little more limited. It still looks really good, but it kind of gives you a framework to create e-learning that looks good and works. You can do a lot of things, but like I said, it's just a little bit more limited than Storyline. Captivate, it's a good tool. It's probably my #2 tool, but it's just not quite as polished as Articulate. Adobe Captivate is probably more comparable to Storyline than Rise. It's more of a traditional e-learning development program. It's still good, but again, it's not as strong as Articulate overall. But it is an Adobe product. So the people who like to use Captivate are often kind of deeply kind of invested in the Adobe ecosystem. So that is one advantage. So this is an example of Storyline. So this is a screenshot from the, you know, developer's view, and you can see why it might be helpful. So this is an example of different templates that you can choose for your interactivity. So you have a drag and drop, pick one, pick many, text entry. So all of these are kind of pre-programmed and really easy to just get you started right away. So you can imagine just picking on the drag and drop, for example, inserting that to a slide. You know, you kind of tell it what you want to do. I'm going to drag this ball to this box, right? And then it takes care of the rest. So it makes it really easy to get started in interactivity with having to do very little to none kind of scripting or programming. So the main uses when we think about using something like Storyline is to add interactivity to a course. So I showed you some examples earlier. But it's mainly, again, to extend the learning objectives, to practice something that's kind of hard to capture in multiple choice quiz, or just to create a level of engagement or interest. It also can be used to create standard compliant courses. So this is what Jeff was speaking to a little bit. So standard compliance, if you've heard of things like SCORM or XAPI or AICC, those are standards. And the purpose of that is to create interoperability. So, and Jeff explained it really good. It's like, so you create a course and you want to sell it to maybe a large company, right? So they don't want to log into your website and have 10,000 people take that training. That would be a huge headache to manage the distribution of 10,000 new logins to their employees. And they won't do it. An organization of that size already has a learning management system created that their employees are already taking courses. So they want you to put your content in their LMS. And this doesn't apply to everybody, but if it does, one, it's a huge opportunity. And two, you have to have a standard compliant course. And that usually means building it inside something like Articulate, wrapping it in that standard compliant shell, and then putting all your content in there. Now you can still do your videos. You can still record, your talking head videos, just like Robert showed you, and then just embed that inside Storyline, and then include some interactions, some quizzes, things like that. Then when you're done, you just push a few buttons and you have a standard compliance course that you can sell to anyone who has an LMS that supports SCORM, for example. So this is an example, a real example from CourseCREEK, where we had a client who was really interested, or really felt very strongly that just talking about how to use this recording sheet, this is what it is. It's like they record what happens day to day. It has to deal with nutrition and food and things like that. So she felt very strongly that they need to record it, like they need to practice recording it. So we created this interactive exercise where they could actually do that. So this is, again, where, just asking a multiple choice question wouldn't really get to kind of the root of what we were trying to do. So we created this exercise where they kind of watch what's happening in a scenario, they make some decisions, and they get feedback on those decisions. So it's a little more complex, but it provides a good example of how you kind of extend or reinforce kind of those learning ideas through interactivity. So again, this is more about the standard compliance. So I think I touched on most of this. We also have, I can give you another example of this, a customer, a client who is really interested in selling her course to like large restaurants, right? So we're definitely addressing this. We want to make sure when we build her course, it's easily portable to a SCORM format. So again, that we can sell it to the larger companies who's going to want to take that LMS or take that content and put it in their LMS. So I know that was maybe a little quick, so let me pause there and see if there's any questions.
We have had some back and forth in the chat, maybe mainly a question about, an LMS that works well with Articulate and still has some of those marketing and CRM type capabilities. And there's always been a big gap. There are tons of corporate type LMSs, that can handle Articulate, but they don't have the marketing and CRM type capabilities. So you want something that's more like a Thinkific or a Teachable. Those platforms aren't SCORM compliant. Thinkific will import Articulate content for you. It doesn't actually track the SCORM stuff in it. LearnWorlds, who Robert has mentioned, it will import SCORM content, and it has all of that kind of CRM marketing website type stuff.
Yeah, and like LearnWorlds is probably a good option. Definitely look at that. And I should also point out that SCORM isn't always required.
Yeah, true.
So what our tools like Articulate let you do is export the content out, easily create it and develop it, then export it out into a web-friendly format. Now that could be SCORM. It could also just be HTML. Really, and what SCORM is, all it is HTML files with a few extra files that tell the LMS what it is, right? And it's ordered and has certain files in a certain way, but it's really just HTML files.
Yep.
So it's possible to export that out with just the HTML. You put it on any web server and it works. Now you can't track, you can't report scores to the LMS, but sometimes if you're just doing like one slide interaction, that's okay. You know, so you don't really need the SCORM. You don't really need SCORM compliance. You can still use the tool to provide kind of rich content, engaging experiences, just using kind of the HTML option.
And the main thing, if you're not, if SCORM isn't, a factor, you just want that sort of web package for your courses, you're mainly just going to want to look at how does that actually, what's the user experience actually like in whatever platform you're using. As I mentioned, Thinkific will import it and they'll actually put it within their framework, and it opens up within the framework of Thinkific. In other platforms, you can technically link out to it, but you'll be sending your users outside of the learning platform, and it may not be the greatest experience. So you want to make sure you sort of check that out when you're looking at different platforms.
Yeah, there's two basic ways to approach it. One is I'm going to take my interaction and embed it in another course experience. Like a lot of like Thinkific and things like that, they have a kind of course builder, a native course builder in it. And then the interaction would just be one page out of many, versus you build the entire course in something like Articulate. Embed all your videos in Articulate. And then from like the LMS perspective, that's just one kind of page, I guess, and all the navigation occurs in Articulate.
Matt, you have a couple questions here, it seems, from Sonia and Jorge. Matt?
Let's see. We go through the questions.
We have from Sonia. Sonia says, can you start with Rise and convert to Storyline? PowerPoint to Rise, or Storyline?
So, all right, can you start with Rise and convert to Storyline? No, you cannot do that. There are separate products. Rise can produce a SCORM package or a web package, just like Storyline, but they are kind of separate source materials, if you will. PowerPoint, you can start with PowerPoint from Articulate. Articulate is very PowerPoint-like at the most basic level. You have slides, you can have transitions between slides, click next and back to navigate between slides. Now you can do a lot more than that, but at the basic level, that's what it is.
All right. So Jorge has a question. LearnWorlds can work to sell for businesses? Question mark.
Like B2B type sales?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it depends. So we definitely work with clients where we've done that. You can sign up, I think, small, if you're dealing with less than 50, maybe, employees, then you can probably do it. Once you go beyond that, once you get to kind of medium, definitely when you get higher than that size businesses, it doesn't scale. So unless you want to kind of figure out kind of the single sign-on options, but it's not.
In that situation, Matt, you would then be looking at potentially licensing with SCORM, correct? Once you get to a certain size, typically.
Right.
Okay.
Typically, yes. Typically.
But it's possible with LearnWorlds to have an offer and sell it to smaller companies, and they can each have their own sort of work and their own.
It can absolutely be done. You could absolutely do it. It's just at a certain scale, the headache of managing that becomes a challenge.
Okay. Does that make sense, Jorge? Yeah.
Any other questions from the chat?
Yeah, if you take a look at here, you're doing well. You have a lot of questions. Can you explain selling model? Terry's asking.
Yeah, that came from a comment that I made. it relates to what Matt was saying, that, there are different ways to sell to a company. If you just need a company's employees to show up on your site with courses, and they're going to log in with their whatever ID you give them and take the courses on, your platform, Learn Worlds can certainly do that. Most platforms can do that. But if, for example, that company needs, a branded portal for its employees, and another company needs a branded portal for its employees, and another company needs a branded portal for its employees, Learn Worlds ain't going to handle that. You need to get a platform that supports what's typically called multi-tenancy. So you can have sort of distributed instances of the platform that you're using. That's going to be jumping up to a little bit different level of a platform. Or you need some way to dispatch your courses from a sort of central repository, so that if they want to call it onto their own learning management system, each of your clients has a way to do that. I'm working on a response in the chat to give you a little more guidance on that. But those would be examples of selling models. Like how are you actually going to give their employees access into your courses through what environment? You sort of have to think through that and then determine, whether a particular platform is going to support that model or not.
And I think there was one more question around kind of video interactivity, I think in Articulate. So yeah, I mean, you can do that. You can definitely embed a video in Articulate and then include some questions or something like that, or use a kind of trigger, use a button or multiple choice response to trigger a different video. Storyline, one of the things that really touted when it came out was its ability to do kind of branching. So it's very easy, for example, to have like a video scenario, something's happening, there's a story unfolding, a narrative of characters, you make a decision. So there's a branch, there's a decision point, and then you might play a different video based on kind of that decision point. And so it's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of story where you can see the consequences of your actions, create learning opportunities, things like that.
I do want to make sure that maybe we get at least a quick look at sort of animation type thing. Would it be possible to do that before we?
Yeah, okay, really quick. So let me show you a short example. Pause it there because I know we're short on time. So this is an example of a Powtoon, right? It's an animated video. So it's not animated like watching a cartoon, but it makes it really easy to include, like these are examples of kind of whiteboard characters. It's a style that you can incorporate. There's also more kind of modern or kind of what you consider more traditional cartoon type animated characters. And it's really useful for, creating that initial hook, again, the focus of engagement, for demonstrating ideas and also storytelling. Like storytelling can be a very powerful learning tool, and this does really well. There's two main tools that I like. Powtoon is one that we use at CourseCREEK. Beyond is also a competitor of Powtoon that's also very popular. I think Beyond might have a little bit more of the market, but I'll show you why I like Powtoon. This is an example of kind of the screen. Like if you were working in Powtoon, this is kind of what you would be able to see. It's timeline based. Right, so you can have different elements popping in and out. They also give you a lot of good kind of stock video footage, photography, illustrations, which is really nice. So you don't need to have a separate library of assets. They pretty much give you everything you need to create some really cool things. And that's one of the reasons I like them. It also stands alone well, so you can create a video by itself that's just like a video training, like a short communication. Like it's not like a full course, but maybe it's a teaser, maybe it's a short communication that just needs to be communicated, or marketing video, something like that. It works really well for that. As you can see, this is an example of a couple of more cartoony type characters. They have different poses and different things that they can do. This is a GIF that's just included here on loop, but you can kind of see you can do a lot of things with it potentially. This is an example of an explainer video, right? So this was something for COVID that's talking about like hand washing and stuff. So you have these little characters in here kind of demonstrating some of these things just to make it a little more interesting. And that is my 60-second Powtoon presentation.
I appreciate that. I think one of the main things there is just for people to see it and kind of understand what that can do. And I mean, this is a tool that obviously CourseCREEK, can do things with, but I mean, I've used Powtoon before, myself to make things. I'm definitely no video expert. You can do some cool things with it, even if you're not an expert. And it's the type of thing that, I think more and more these days, you have to do some things that make your content feel unique, that are helping you to convey your knowledge and skills in a way that that others aren't out there. This is just one of those tools. You can use this in combination with something like Articulate. You can use Articulate and Powtoon in combination with the video that you're probably already shooting for courses. You up that video, you use something like Articulate, you blend in some things like Powtoon. That's not a huge investment to do that, but it will make your courses head and shoulders above most of what's out there in the marketplace at this point, which is what pretty much anybody who's creating courses right now needs to be concerned with. Because like I was saying at the beginning, everybody and their mother has a course right now. So how is yours? Obviously you're unique, your skills and knowledge are unique, but also how are you going to present that in a unique way?
In Powtoon, you can try it for free. They have kind of a free plan. So if you just wanted to play with it, you can go for it.
Yeah, you can definitely do it for free. And I did put a discount in there. You can get 15% off if you go with it. Somebody's asking about an Articulate discount. Unfortunately, I don't have an Articulate discount for you. They're a little harder. They're huge. They're harder to deal with. But they do. I think they do run specials from time to time. So keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, they do have an educator's discount if you're a teacher or a student.
So. Cool. Well, we're a little past the top of the hour now. I want to be respectful of people's time, but if anybody has other questions at this point before we sign off, I'll note this was in the chat and the emails that went out about it, but we have recorded this, so we'll be sending out the recording. We'll have links to the various resources that Robert's provided, links to the YouTube channel that will have this and other recordings from sessions. On it. Make sure that Powtoon discount's in there for anybody who wants it. Definitely encourage you to check out. We have a relationship with CourseCREEK. Let me put that into the chat here real quick so you know where to link for that. And check out. This is my talking about our relationship with them. Certainly let Robert know that you heard about them from us if you head that way and do end up wanting to work with them. Robert, Matt, closing comments.
Thank you for your valuable time today, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, for putting it together. And I'm standing by, willing, able, and ready to help anybody that wants some assistance on this. For myself, with on-camera stuff, which is sort of my wheelhouse, or anybody on my team. Please don't be shy.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It was great to be able to present here. So thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody who came from many places around the country and the world. And good luck to everybody onward in the learning revolution. Take care.